Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the California Community College's Education Planning Initiative, CCC MyPath webinar. During our session today, we will be going over some information about the webinar, about the CCC MyPath product. But before we begin, I do need to let you know of a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone on the webinar will be placed in a listen-only mode during the presentation. However, should you have a question or need any kind of assistance, please use the chat function so we can go ahead and respond. In addition, if you have questions about the presentation itself, we will be answering those during the Q&A session, so please make sure you use the chat box to place your questions, and I'll be reading your questions to our speakers today during the end of the session. Also want to let you know that this particular presentation will be recorded and placed on the API website within 5 business days for you to review, to share, or if you have colleagues who weren't able to make it, to let them know about it. As we begin today, I want to let you know of our speakers. We today are joined by Mike Caruso, who is the MyPath product manager. In addition, we have Dave Williams from MZ, who will be discussing career coach. And then we also are pleased to have joining us Mitch Leahy, who is the coordinator for A&R at Santa Rosa Junior College, who will be sharing some information about how their college has implemented MyPath. We also, on our agenda today, will be having, as I mentioned before, a Q&A session, so we want to make sure that you have your questions for that ready to go. And during our session, just to kind of remind everyone and level set what you can expect, we'll be talking about how MyPath will align your school with Pathways Pillar 1, discussing how it can help with the high attrition between application and enrollment. In addition, discussing MyPath Career Coach and how it adds value to your MyPath implementation. And then Mitch, once again, will be discussing his experience and his college's experience currently using CCC MyPath. With that, let me go ahead and turn it over to our first speaker, Mike Caruso. Mike, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Awesome, thanks Q. So let me just bring this up full screen. All right, is it full screen for you guys, Q?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you about CCC MyPath. As the introduction went, my name is Mike Caruso. I work with the Technology Center, and I am the product manager for MyPath. So I've kind of seen it evolve from where it was and into the product that it is today. Specifically, we've seen the product sort of evolve over time to align with the guided pathways sort of rising tide that we're seeing across the state. And we're excited to talk to you today about some of the problems that we can see MyPath helping colleges with. So to give a little bit of background, CCC MyPath is something that you may have heard of previously referred to as the Student Services Portal. It is funded through the Education Planning Initiative, and it was originally designed as a sort of supplementary local portal that would help students find their way to information about student services, sort of find information that would help them achieve success. And it's something that has evolved from that point into what it is that we're going to be talking about today. Some of the important things that I want to call out about MyPath before we talk specifically about how it assists with guided pathways are that the experience that a student gets once they enter MyPath is based explicitly and exclusively on feedback from actual CCC admins and students from around the state. So as we developed the experience, we did a lot of iterative design work and field work with students of varying backgrounds, right? So we talked with students who are young, students who are old, students who are financially privileged, those who are not, students who are technically proficient, and students who are not familiar with technology at all. And a lot of the things that they gave us kind of fed into design that we landed on. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there are a couple of very specific users that we are targeting with this product. We are focused on helping students who are coming into the system So prospective students, we call those, students who are pre-application and trying to figure out whether the California community college system is right for them. And then, especially as it pertains to talking about guided pathways, we want to help students who have just applied as well, right? So we want to help your colleges address the needs of students who are immediately post-application, students who are kind of stuck between the application and the enrollment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. On the administrative side, there are two groups of folks who will help us to run the product. So that pre-application phase is handled by a group of folks at the Chancellor's Office. The content and experience is kind of owned and run by them. And then when it comes to those post-application students who've just applied, the college staff, so your staff, will help us to run that experience. And all this will become much more clear to you a little bit later when we take a look at kind of what the product looks like. The best way to open up, I think, is to talk about guided pathways, right? I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with this at this point, but if you're not, guided pathways is essentially a framework that will help students get from a state where they need to set a goal for themselves, the beginning of their student journey, so to speak, all the way through to the end where they achieve success. And there are pillars that kind of denote the various phases of the framework, right? So we want to help students to clarify the path. So that is pillar one, and that is where MyPath probably does most of its work as it is today. There is pillar two, which is to enter the path. And that is kind of helping students to, based on the goals they've set in the first pillar, sort of enter the pathway that will help them get to where they're trying to go. There is pillar three, which is to stay on the path. And we actually have some pretty interesting tools that will help you guys provide some of that functionality as well. And then four, and this is kind of on the institution themselves, ensure learning. Pillar four is ensure learning, and that's basically what helps the student stay on track through uses of tools like tracking student data, reporting, ensuring that the way things are set up is working for students, and then tweaking things to make sure that they continue to work or to address problems that we see. And MyPath applies these four pathways in some pretty specific ways, but we're going to focus really heavily today on clarifying the path and enter the path. MyPath provides tool sets around career exploration, helping students set goals. We want to help students translate those into programs that they can interact with at the college. And let's talk about how MyPath does that. And the best way to do this is to start with a problem statement. Okay, so this is a statistic that I don't think we've, when I tell it to folks, oftentimes it's the first time they've heard it, but it is a very powerful statistic. And that is, we've learned through examining the application data that right now it's between 71 and 72%, fully 71 or 72% of all of the applications that come in electronically into the overall CCC system do not result in a student enrolling in college. So I'll pause and let that sink in for a second. So that is more than 1.5 million students that are applying for college right now, and they are not then following through and enrolling at a college. Obviously, the goal of the system is to help as many students as possible. And so to know that we are missing that many students, the opportunity to help that many students for whatever reason, I think should tell everybody that there is work to be done to be able to reach out to those folks, get them to enroll, get them to begin taking classes so that we can help them like we all want to. And in examining the student workflow as students apply to college, there are some obvious deficiencies that we've uncovered that MyPath helps to solve for. So this is the experience that a student gets prior to the application. We know that it is a struggle for students to try to find all of the details and all of the information that they need that will help to promote that the California Community College system is right for them in one place. We expect them to go to 4, 5, 6 different websites, find information about scholarships, find information about financial aid, find information about student services. All those kinds of things are spread out across a lot of different websites. And that is not a great way to help students to get started with the system, right? And so MyPath works with the Chancellor's Office to help to start to address that issue, right? We want to set a set of tasks for the student that they can proceed through that will basically, in a prescriptive, sort of ordered way, help them to get to all the information that they want to, or that they would need to be able to understand that they should submit an application into the system. Once they've actually proceeded to jump into the application process, that I think is where the most powerful aid from MyPath comes. So let's talk about what the student experience looks like for a student who's applying to college today. So, and this is probably the place where it'll be the most interesting to folks who are on the call. We know right now that oftentimes a student is going to your college website. They are clicking on the Apply to College button. They are proceeding into the application, and then they're spending the 10 or 20 minutes that it takes to fill out that application. And then they are submitting the application, and at the conclusion of them going through that entire process, they're getting a page that says, "Thanks for your application." And that's the end of the process, right? That's where the application process cuts off. The data is sent to the college processes that application data, and after maybe a day or two, once they've created the record in their local student information system, they reach out to the student via email most times with a set of next steps, right? So if we kind of recap that, a student basically, in the strongest terms available to them, said, "Hey, I'm so interested in going to college here that I'm going to sit through 10 or 20 minutes of this web form. I'm going to push submit at the end, and all we give them is an experience that says, thanks for your application. We'll get back to you in a couple days." So it should be no wonder to folks, I think, that we are losing a lot of students who are submitting applications and they are never enrolling because we give them a pretty poor experience as they're attempting to gain entrance to college. So let's talk about some of the ways that MyPath can help to solve for that. When you adopt MyPath, you have the ability to turn it on immediately post-application, right? So this is the student onboarding concept that we talked about earlier. And it fits directly in that space, that period between the application and the college reaching back out to the student with information about their next steps. Basically, where before all the student would get is a page that says, "Thanks for your application." Now instead, we can give them a page that comes right afterwards. So we're integrated with CCCApply. We have the ability to allow the student to enter a very customized onboarding experience immediately post-application. What the student can actually do is once they submit the application, they enter your account, you have the ability to customize this for your students, right? So you have the ability to set up your branding, your colors. There is an opportunity to basically configure imagery of your campus, of your students, your sports teams, your local college life, whatever you need to do to make it feel like it is an extension of your local systems and make it feel like the student has actually started their experience with your college, right? But then the actual meat and potatoes of the experience is below this image where you can see this row of tasks called placement, financial assistance, childcare. What we found as we went out and we did a lot of research with students around the state around what they were looking for in an onboarding experience, what they were looking for in a user experience in a web platform like this, was that they overwhelmingly disliked the concept of being dropped into a new experience where they are expected to find what they should do, in what order they should do things, how long the things that they're being asked to do will take them. Especially they did not like the idea of bouncing around to a lot of different websites to have to find these and complete these tasks that are being asked of them. So what we did was we constructed an experience that is prescriptive in nature and addresses those concerns directly by allowing you to set tasks for your students, order them, and present them to the student in a sort of sequence that you basically control. So where you see placement, financial assistance, childcare, these are all tasks. You control these completely. So you have the opportunity to decide what tasks are being asked of your students, where those tasks should point. You have the opportunity to configure content, embed videos, images into informational pages within MyPath itself. So if all you're asking a student to do, for example, is to read a page about financial aid at your college, you can do that pretty easily. You can send them to a page in MyPath. As Mitch will show you later, you can send them to a page in your local portal or on your website. Really, it's up to you. But you can do that very easily. If you want to send them to another platform, maybe you want them to go generate an ed plan. Maybe you want them to go view an orientation module that you've put in your Canvas account. All those things can be done as well And MyPath is fully enabled with single sign-on to be able to allow students to easily transition between those platforms without having to maintain additional sets of credentials. Further, given that we are integrated with the single sign-on proxy, which is a piece of technology that is deployed across the state, a student does not need to remember a separate set of credentials to re-enter MyPath later. They can actually do so with your local college credentials once they've been assigned to that student. But in terms of an onboarding process, we know that MyPath is not, or rather that an ideal onboarding experience is not a one-size-fits-all ordeal, right? We know that each student probably has separate needs, and trying to solve for those individual needs with a web experience that is universal is not really the best case scenario. And so we have developed a customized integration with CCCApply. So we get the student's application data immediately when they push submit on the application. And using that data, you will have the opportunity when you configure MyPath to set up rules that will create a customized onboarding pathway for every incoming student. So for example, if a student says that they are a veteran, just pulling an example out, you can actually say, all right, for my veterans, I don't want the first step to be placement, as you see here in this example. I actually want the first step is to read about veterans services at my campus. If they are a veteran and they've also said that they need childcare services, as an example, you can actually say, all right, so for veterans who need childcare service, here's a very specific page I want them to read. Or here are 2 different tasks I want them to read. And you can set these rules up to order your tasks, to create tasks that only students who fit the criteria for that rule will see. And what that does is it allows you to create an onboarding experience that is also streamlined, right? It wouldn't make sense that you'd want to take up a large chunk of your onboarding real estate for students with tasks that only pertain to maybe 5% of your incoming student population. And that is all completely controlled by you. Additionally, one of the things that MyPath comes bundled with is a communications engine, right? So we have the ability, again, utilizing those rules, to allow your college to send text messages, to send emails, to send messages to a MyPath inbox that you can see up here in the header, so that the student can be interacted with immediately post-application. You don't have to wait a couple of days for that record to be processed in the SIS. You can send text messages and really engage that student via multiple sort of communications channels. And lastly, one of the things that I want to point out too is that we know that the problem that we're trying to solve for at this point is trying to prevent students from falling out of the application funnel, right? We know that we have a problem where students are submitting applications and then not enrolling. And so we want to make sure that we are as sticky as possible and that we're keeping students engaged with the onboarding process between the application and the enrollment. And so you can actually set up automated nudges, automated reminders to your MyPath tasks that you configure, so that you can say, hey, a student, I know that you came and you completed 2 of the 4 tasks I set out for you, but there's actually a 3rd task that's incomplete and you left the website. So you can set up reminders after 1 day, after 3 days, after 7 days, et cetera, to automatically remind that student, hey, you have unfinished tasks that are in your onboarding pathway, keep them coming back. Those reminders are sent out, again, via the same methods, text messages, emails, the MyPath inbox. But really the idea is to continuously and in an automated fashion, continue to engage with the student to try to keep them involved in the process and do as much as we can to make sure that they transition then into enrollment at the college. We have a lot to get through during the webinar today, so I want to make sure that I let you know that we're only really scratching the surface of how this can be configured at your college. But I want you to know kind of the high-level functionality that we're offering, the problem that we're trying to solve for, and to let you know that the product is obviously very configurable for what your college needs. So in meeting with a lot of colleges across the state, we've discovered rather, that there are 2 major workflow models that work for the majority of use cases that the college gave to us. So the one that we just talked about is where the student submits the application, goes through the normal workflow where they come from your website, go through the application, and then enters your customized MyPath account immediately following the application, right? That's kind of the primary use case. We also know that there are some colleges out there who want to expose a tool set to students before the application to try to drive additional meaning into the responses that the student is giving to us in the application itself, right? So you can imagine if you were able to give your students the opportunity to utilize career exploration tool set, for example, before they submit an application, you might get higher quality responses on those career selections in the application, right? And we have Dave from MZ here to talk you through Career Coach, which is bundled with MyPath for free. so he can explain to you kind of the power of the career exploration tool sets that we're offering. But I just want to let you guys know also that it is not a one-size-fits-all sort of implementation model. You can choose to use MyPath before the application if you think that's what's right for your students. You can choose to use it after the application if you want to try to solve for that issue of students who are applying and then not enrolling. You can actually choose to do it both ways. You can have students enter MyPath before the application and then return to MyPath after the application while they wait for the enrollment process at the college. These are all options that we can offer to you during the implementation process, which is very easy, by the way. And before we sign off for today, we'll talk a little bit about next steps if your college wants to get engaged with the tool set. But for right now, I want to make sure that we give a good amount of time to Dave to talk to us about Career Coach. So I'll pass it over to you, Dave.
Dave Q, can we do a quick audio check? I want to make sure that I'm coming through loud and clear.
Coming through loud and clear, Dave. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Is my screen showing up there, Dave?
Yep, definitely. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for taking the time to take a look at MyPath and Career Coach today. As Dave Q mentioned, my name is Dave Williams. I am Vice President of Client Services at MZ. I'm sure we've worked with a number of you all in the past. We're a labor market data firm, and we specialize in, as you can see from our website here, connecting colleges to students and employers. We've been around for about 16 years, and we do everything from helping an institution assess their footprint on their region. We help them align programs with economic demand of their catchment area. And we also assist students with career exploration, and we can provide insight into your alumni base. Today, we're going to be honing in on the career exploration piece of our product suite, which over the last few years we've been developing alongside the MyPath product. Today, we'll be walking you through the various workflows, generalized workflows that we've seen users sort of blaze a trail so far in their use of Career Coach. So to use our time really well today, I want to focus in on those three workflows. And in advance of doing that, I want to sort of sketch out what the profile is of the user that is going through that workflow. So we'll be working through three individual workflows. And the three that we've sort of generally identified, we'll have a user that might come into Career Coach and they have already identified their educational pathway. They have a program in mind or a major that they're interested in pursuing, but they may find themselves asking a question about the career field that they would find themselves in upon persisting and finishing out their education. So we have a user set that is coming in and again has a good idea of what sort of program it is they want to pursue or that they're enrolled in right now, but they do not have a good idea or any sort of clarity around what career that educational pathway will prepare them for. So that's sort of our first workflow. Our second workflow is sort of the mirror image of that. So we have someone who has clarified in their mind, articulated to themselves what sort of career field they want to end up in, but they're unclear or they haven't quite figured out what it's going to take to get them there. So what sort of training do they need to pursue? Where should they pursue it? And upon graduating, they know generally what sort of field they want to end up in, but is that a wise decision to begin with? Can we give them objective data by which they can assess the health of that decision? So that sort of represents the second profile, the general profile of a user that would be coming into Career Coach. And then the third, you probably guessed already, the third profile that we've sketched out is someone who doesn't really have any clear idea of what career field they want to end up in. And if they don't know that, they really don't have any sort of idea of what sort of pathway they want to pursue to get there. They know generally that that they need to get a good career. They know generally that that higher education is an excellent vehicle to help them attain the right career field. But other than that, they don't have a ton of clarity around what it is that they should want and how to get there. So now that we've sketched those out, I want to take an opportunity to actually show you the workflow within Career Coach. So we're going to start out with the workflow that talks about a user who understands the program that they want to participate in or are already enrolled in, but they don't have a good idea of what career field that will result in. Where will this educational decision take them? So this is our general layout here. I'm just going to walk you through what a user might experience as they go through this general workflow. Before we begin, for someone who has a good understanding of what program they're in or they're interested in attending, but don't know what career field that will result in, you can either search for it by a keyword, or you can look through sort of a genus and species framework under Browse Programs, where we house there are 23 guided pathways or meta majors, depending on how you term them at your institution. We've worked with Mike and company as a part of the EPI group to come up with these categories. So all of the programs offered at each of the 114 institutions in California will fall under one of these general and broad headings. So you can see business management, communications, IT, education, and so forth. So a user could come in and find the program that they know they're interested in by starting out generally and gradually honing in on what it is that they're interested in. Or probably an easier way of doing that would be clicking on the search button in the upper right, where they can actually keyword search for the program that they know they're interested in. Again, the question here is, what career will that lead them to? So we're going to start with we're going to search for programs here, and I've sort of picked out dental hygiene as an interesting program for us to look at. So we are going to type that in, and we'll search, and that's going to bring us to a list of dental hygiene programs, or a list of programs that fit our keyword search, followed by a list of institutions that offer said program. Now, one of the things we probably won't have time to show you today, but which is a key feature of Career Coach within MyPath, is for any user that originates on one of your institution's website, the product will be able to know where that user originates from. And we've built this in such a way that the institution's website that the user originated from will be brought to the top of the list. So in lieu of actually originating from one of your websites, it's going to default to an alphabetical listing. But for example, if I was coming from Cabrillo College's website, I made my way from MyPath to Career Coach, it will populate Cabrillo's programs near the top of the list. So we will give priority to whatever institution's website the user originates from. That is quite confusing. If there are questions, we'll be happy to address those in the Q&A session. So once the user has found their program and the institution that they've originated from has risen to the top of the list, they can immediately go click on that institution, and it will take you to a page dedicated to that program. But we don't stop there, because we already know that. We know what program we're interested in. It's dental hygiene. We are interested in what sort of career outcomes we can attain once we've completed that program. And so what we've included here is a list of occupations, in this case, a single occupation, a career that connects back to our program. And if we click on that, it will provide us a good bit of objective data intelligence around that career field. Now, before I jump into the details on the data, I do want to point out on the right-hand side the geographical filter that we have here. So we have, I believe there are 16 regions or something along those lines that we've populated the site with, and just like the way we sorted the institutions, the product will be able to tell what website the user originated from, and we'll be able to connect that back to the proper region. So if I was coming from Cabrillo College, it would automatically be able to connect us back and default to the region that Cabrillo is located within. And I want to demonstrate that real quickly. We have a median salary for dental hygienists, as well as an annual amount of job openings that roughly equates to the demand for the services of a dental hygienist within the region. And right now we are looking at California. But if I was to say, go down to, we'll say San Diego, and we choose that region, you'll notice that the numbers change. So the beauty of Career Coach is the regionalized career and wage information, because obviously, as I'm sure you're well aware, the job prospects and the wages for a given career will fluctuate radically region to region. So we're able to incorporate the regional trends and the regional demand and the wage curves for careers within different geographies in the state. So we've got a bit of overview here about dental hygienists. We've got the median salary. We have the estimated amount of annual job openings, the job demand for that career. And then there are several tabs here for where we can go to get more detail on that particular career. So we're on the overview page, and then we're going to click on the About section here. I want to quickly highlight a description of the career. So we have a few bullet points that talk to us a bit more about the daily responsibilities and requirements of dental hygienists, as well as a national bird's eye view of the typical level of education required within this career field. Now, this is the one bit of data that has not been regionalized, so please do keep in mind this is a national data point. So we can see that just under 80% of all dental hygienists in the country have an associate's degree, and just over a fifth, just over 20%, have a bachelor's degree, which gives us an idea of what might be required of someone interested in jumping into that field. Next, we have the wages tab, which gives us an idea of the wage curve starting out, as well as the ceiling wage that someone might be able to attain, again, in the San Diego region. If we were to switch this to the northern coastal region, you can see that the wage curve will change to reflect our new region. And then lastly, we have this employment tab, which will give us an idea of what the demand is in terms of job postings, as well as in terms of jobs that are recognized by the federal government through various reporting functions like unemployment insurance and tax returns. So we have two different sets of economic indicators that show us or demonstrate for us the demand or the lack of demand for this particular career. So what we've done now is we've made our way from a particular program that we know we're interested in or that we have enrolled in to get a better sense of the prospects, not only the prospects of what careers you might attain with that educational pathway, but also what are the prospects for that career upon graduation. What is the wage? Where might I go get a job? And what sort of demand is there for that job in a particular locale? So that is our first workflow. We'll move on to our second one here, and we'll again, in the interest of time, we'll move through these very quickly. So the next workflow that we have here, I'll go back to the home page. The next workflow we can generally sketch out as someone who has the reverse. They understand what career it is they're interested in. They're ready to pursue that career field, but they're unsure of what programs, what sort of training might be required of a candidate who's interested in that particular career field. And not only that, but they're maybe uninformed as to where would be best for them to pursue their education. So what we're going to do here, instead of in the previous example where we started with programs and worked our ways to careers, we're going to start with careers and work our way back to programs. So we're going to go the opposite direction. We're going to follow a very similar workflow. You can see from the Browse Careers button, you can start at a very general framework and work your way into the particular career field that you're interested in. These various categories are very general categories under which all career fields will roll up into, and you can drill down into these and find more and more specific career fields to choose from. This is a far more time-intensive route that you would take as a user to find that information. So instead of drilling down onto each one of these, we would sketch it out that you'd want to use the search function and search by keyword. So what I picked for this particular example is we're going to have this particular profile, this particular user type be interested in becoming an accountant. So what is it going to take to become an accountant? So we'll search for accountants using our keyword search. And we have a number of careers now. Again, we're searching for careers, not programs. So we have a number of career fields that populate our search based on the keyword that we use. And this data should now look a little bit familiar. Under each of the return entries here, we have a little blurb about what the career field does, what is required of a worker in this particular field, what their wages and what their typical level of education might be required for this. Again, looking at that national bird's eye view. Now, one of the benefits to this particular workflow is you may find somebody who understands the career field and knows a good bit about it because they've done research. And so this bit of information might not be all that enlightening, but you might also find someone who knows generally that's what they're interested in, but they don't have any way of assessing the health of that decision. Is that a wise decision or is it not a wise decision? We provide, again, the employment data, the wage data alongside of these careers so that the decision can be made up front before pursuing an educational pathway as to whether that's a good decision for this particular person. So we can click on accountants, again, come to a very similar page where we get a lot of good objective data on accountants. Remember that the data we're looking at is for the region that we have selected over here. The question we're trying to answer is what do we need to do to attain this career field, and where do we need to go to get what we need to attain this particular outcome? So what we have here below the employment and wage data is a list of available programs, again, controlled to the geography that we've selected over here. Please do remember that users will be coming from your website through MyPath to Career Coach, and we will and the product will be able to know what site they originated from, and will be able to populate the geography accordingly. So now we can see, based on the geography that we've selected, that there are 2 accounting programs available to us, both at Mendocino College. So we can then click on the institution, which will take us to the program page. This link in particular will take us back to Mendocino's website, where we can find out more information about that particular program. Lastly, on this particular workflow, there are also related careers. So it allows the user to assess what sort of other like career fields that they could find that are very similar to what an accountant might be doing. So there are a lot of different options in here for them to choose from should they want to reconsider their decision about accountants. So that's our second workflow. Dave, I want to pause for a second to make sure that I have time for this last workflow. Is that okay?
I think so, yeah. I believe we have about maybe like 2 or 3 minutes if you want to just go through that really quickly.
We can make through it in less time than that. So this Thank you. This last workflow, again, we're painting the picture of someone who generally understands that they want to find a good career, but they don't know what that will look like. They also generally know that the best mechanism at their disposal to make that happen is higher education, and in particularly the community college system. So they know that higher education is the vehicle to their desire, which is a good, sustainable career field. But they don't know more than that. They have general interests, but they don't understand how those interests connect to particular career fields. And so we want to take the opportunity to help them make that connection, which is the last workflow here. And you can see that there is an assessment piece to Career Coach, which will allow us to help a user determine what they might be interested in doing. So we built within Career Coach 2 separate assessments. There's a 6-question assessment and a 60-question assessment, both of which are modeled off of the Tom Holland code. Now, these are our assessments that we've built, but the scoring will be done according to the Holland code. The 6-question assessment is by far the most popular one, as you can imagine. The 60-question assessment is far more robust. It's less popular because there's 10 times as many questions. Just so you know, it takes about 2.5 minutes tops to really make it through that assessment. In the interest of time today, we'll stick with the 6-question assessment. So I'm going to go through these and answer them real quick. So do I like to build things? Do I like to problem solve? Do I like to express my idea through mediums? No, I don't. Do I like to help people? No, I really don't. Am I good at would I like to persuade people? Not sure. And would I like to manage a lot of details? Yes, I would. And then lastly, what level of education would I like to obtain? I'm going to click associate degrees, and here are the top traits according to my answers on the assessment. And below, we list out the top, the career clusters that best match our answers to the assessment. I'm going to click on the STEM career cluster, and we will look at industrial engineering as it's near the top. There's a 98% match. You'll notice there's a filter over here on the side. I'm going to get rid of occupations that typically require more than a 2-year degree, which leaves us with the following career fields. So we have industrial engineering technicians and manufacturing engineering technologists. And again, we've been through this workflow. We can now click on the career to get more information, objective data on it, as well as see programs and the institutions that are offering programs that train for each of these careers, which again are controlled by the map over here on the right based on which region I've selected. And then again, we would just be rehashing things we've already covered, but from there on you can again dig into more detail, see where programs are being offered and by which institutions, and begin to make your decision on where it would be best for you to enroll to achieve that particular career outcome. Dave, that's all I had. I'm ready to turn it on back over to you.
Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind, stop sharing your screen. We're going to go ahead and at this point turn it over to Mitch Leahy from Santa Rosa Junior College. Mitch, I believe that you had mentioned that Mike Caruso had some slides for you as well.
Yeah.
Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing those for us.
Yep, let me share my screen 1 second.
Meantime, everybody, I'm Mitch Leahy. I'm the coordinator of admissions and records at the Santa Rosa Junior College, and I helped with the implementation of MyPath for our district. So we're going to get this slide up here momentarily. And we'll go maybe to the next slide because I know we have limited time, so I'll try to keep this quick. So the Tech Center helped us with creating a single sign-on page, so that basically what that means is a student can use the login that they're normally used to logging into their portal, whatever portal you have at your local district. They can use the same login information to access MyPath. And so the Tech Center helped us to have a customized page, which we're still working and developing on, but this page allowed us to put our logo, put our branding in there, put links in there that help students recover their logon information for the local college. and be able to log in directly into MyPath. So here's an instance of our MyPath, what you can see right here, the various advisor cards that we have created and customized for our particular college and for our purposes of branding and whatnot. So we have our students right there. We have our logo. We're going right here to the first advisor card called Step for New Students. That was completely customized, where we have all of our steps listed there. There are links that we typed in, that we identified and defined. And I was able to do that with, not being an IT person, but being an admissions and records person, being able to customize and edit that tool. So we can go to the next slide. So here you would notice that most colleges maybe have a different flow when it comes to the steps for new students. We do apply, assessment, orientation, education plan, and counseling and enrollment. Most other colleges I know, they may put orientation before assessment. But what's nice about this tool is you can see that the student is learning what and why they're doing these steps. Gives them an estimated time for all the steps. Again, it's an estimate. It's not complete, this is exactly how it works for everybody, but it's an estimated time. And also, you notice here, we've highlighted there the assessment is put right after application for our particular district. So we're able to customize that, make it a link. When they click on that link, perhaps I think it's the next slide that has the information about assessment. Yep, so we're able to link them to our homepage with our assessment information, and we chose to do that so we have just one central location for this information for even students who are not yet our students yet. So we have everybody linking to the same resource for how to complete that step. So that's within our college's website. But you can have the option of putting that information on your instance of MyPath if you choose to. You don't have to link it to your own website. The next example here is Explore Careers. Here, Santa Rosa Junior College decided to use our own Career Center as the step. So if we click on that particular advisor card by going to the next slide, you notice that that's the only step that we wanted for our college. So our district decided that we didn't want to use Career Coach. We do have it as an app listed on MyPath, but we feature our Career Center because that's what our Career Center wanted our students to go to first. They wanted to be linked up to that. So we link them up to our external site, and they're able to access that website. You notice here that we have another advisor card as an example, register for classes. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we put in the steps that we want students to do when they get ready to register. So you notice that there's 3 steps. The plan for your class schedule step is actually a link to our college scheduler tool that we use. So we want students to do that, and then they're going to confirm their registration priority, make sure that they're ready to register on the day that they're assigned, and then they are to register. So we have all those links set up. And of course, remember that MyPath has apps that are built in or baked in when you first get the product, as well as apps that you can create and customize yourself. So if you have a particular tool that you want to interface with MyPath and make it an app that a student can access, you can do it here, and the Tech Center can assist you with the documentation about that with your IT. And as remember with Mike's part of the presentation, he had mentioned that you can put MyPath in front of the application or behind the application. But either way, there's a benefit, right? So you have, if you're a college that wants your student to be more informed with selecting a career goal and using Career Coach, you may want to put MyPath before CCCApply so that they're ready to go and they know what major to select. Or if you are determined to get that application, like our college is, to get that application in our system so we can start communication with that student and outreach with that student, then you can put the application always like it is in front of MyPath, and at the very end of the process, they can be guided to MyPath. So they're not left in the lurch. They're not left without ability to know what to do and what's next steps to take. Just keep in mind, though, and with MyPath, MyPath relies on the CCC ID to provide a dynamic custom experience. So that means you need to make sure that your students are using CCCApply to fully benefit from the MyPath tool so that CCC ID identifies them. And again, that's key to the single sign-on that we talked about. It's not just your local login. It involves some technical aspects that pass that student over with the CCC ID to MyPath. So what we look forward to in the future at Santa Rosa Junior College is greater integration with CCCApply and Canvas. and having MyPath in that mix so that students can access Canvas and access CCCApply with MyPath. Text messaging to students, we look forward to that as well. That's going to roll out soon, we know. And electronic forms. I think almost everybody would like to get rid of some paper forms. And given ADA compliance and things like that, we want to have more forms online and less PDFs and less paper. So that's pretty much our experience.
Thank you very much. And then, Mike, if you wouldn't mind allowing me to have my screen.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, can I go through one last slide?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so I know that the stuff that's on this slide is going to address some of the questions that I've seen in the chat. But if you're interested in getting started with MyPath, we know that this presentation was very high level. A lot of times it was just images of things that you're seeing in MyPath. I'll just start with the final bullet on this list here, which is that we want to schedule a demo with your college directly. So we have a team of folks that work at the Tech Center that are going to work with us to essentially get involved with your local group. We will actually show you through the live product, show you through Career Coach in person. You can bring whatever team you'd like to that meeting, and we'll go from there. We're looking for an approval from the college president or the VP of Student Services to get the product kicked off. That is not a requirement to get the demo scheduled, though. We obviously understand that we're going to want to show you some things before you approach, your executive team around beginning the project. But that is a step that we'll go through as part of the actual product launch. Let's take a second and talk about the cost. It is free. MyPath is free. The implementation help from the Tech Center is free. Career Coach is free. It's all free. So that's basically all there is to say about that. In terms of the implementation configuration itself, it's actually very simple. If you picked it up from Mitch's portion of the presentation, we actually have built MyPath in such a way that it does not require your IT team to administer the product. And our teams, counselors, we have various staff and faculty handling portions of administering MyPath. It is not a difficult thing to configure and set up, and we are always there to help you with that. But in terms of impact on local IT, there are really only two steps that are required to get MyPath launched, which are, and we'll go over this when we actually schedule a demo with you guys, but basically as long as you are on a supported version of Shibboleth for your SSO and you're using the SSO proxy, then those are all the technical prerequisites for using the products, and MyPath can be launched very easily from there. If, for example, your college is using something like Canvas already, and I know many of you are, chances are those prerequisites have actually already been satisfied. And then in that case, MyPath becomes an even easier thing to launch. Configuring the product itself is something that takes on the course of days, not even weeks. It is very easy to do. But again, we'll cover all that with you guys individually once we get some demonstrations scheduled. Here's a good email address for you to reach out to. Eric Goldman at ccctechcenter.org is one of our guys who will help us to run the demos. Keith Franco, who's also in the chat, so that's K Franco at ccctechcenter.org, is another good person to talk to. Either of them can help us to get you scheduled into a demonstration. So we definitely look forward to hearing from you, and I will hand it back over to you, Q.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So at this point, we are now ready for our Q&A. I have been logging your questions in our chat box, and we'll go ahead and go through it and those. Mike, the first couple of questions are related to your to the statistic you mentioned earlier in the presentation, the 71 to 72%. The questions are, is that related to unique applications or unduplicated students? And then in addition, are the 71% unique students who applied to the CC and did not attend a four-year institution?
So in answer to the first question, I know that those applications are both deduped and also spam applications. So things that are considered to be bad applications are filtered out of that statistic. So we think it's actually 71 to 72% of good non-duplicative applications are the value that we're seeing, which should make that number probably even more powerful. With regard to the second question, I actually don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, so we would have to get back to you.
Okay. Just to let everyone know, we'll be placing some of these questions in our Get Satisfaction page, which I'll be providing a link to at the end of the session, so you can check back there for answers to those questions. Our next question is also related to your portion of the presentation, Mike. In the placement option, can we create a survey or questionnaire that would make an initial placement recommendation and further steps for students?
So you can. We do have built-in survey functionality. you wouldn't be able to ask assessment style questions in the survey itself. It's not that kind of a platform, but certainly if you're looking for some high level information, you just want to ask some yes, no, or multiple choice. Did you receive these kinds of grades? Did you do these kinds of things in high school, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to ask those kinds of questions and then lead a student to a specific resulting piece of information, that's all supported in MyPath.
Fantastic. And then Mike, from Tina, there's a question asking if there's a cost to the institution, to the college, per message for texting.
There is not at this time. Currently, we handle all of that.
Okay, great. And
I will caveat that statement that once we get 113 live colleges all sending many, many text messages, we may have to revisit that. But for the time being, at least, there is no cost.
Great. And the next question is for both you and Dave, possibly to answer either separately or together. Is there any data integration between MyPath/Career Coach and student information systems/customer relationship systems?
So Dave, I'll hop on that one first. So from the MyPath perspective, we are actually working with Project Glue right now to be able to begin integrating the information we're collecting in MyPath with the college SIS. And once that is live, I actually think we'll probably host one of these webinars to talk about how that works.
Okay, great. And then Dave, did you want to go ahead and answer from the Career Coach perspective?
No, that about sums it up. We've connected with Mike and team, and they have all of the mechanisms in place to capture the data and feed it back to the institutions.
Okay.
Yeah, actually worth mentioning on that front is that we will be the source of the student-related data for the SIS. Even things that are happening in Career Coach will come from the MyPath student profile. But there is an integration that Career Coach has, which is that they use, well, it's not an integration per se, but they use COCI data to provide that list of programs. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. So just to clarify, are you talking about the data inputs that we get for the programs? Sorry.
Yeah, like when you initially launch Career Coach at a college, like COCI being the source for the program list that you get initially.
Oh, sure. So we get all that information off the web. So that is something that we scrape on our own when colleges elect to move forward with Career Coach and MyPath. So all that information is available online, and then we work with the college to ensure that we have the most up-to-date catalog, and that all the information about the programs we have is as up-to-date as it can be.
Okay, great. Thank you both. And Dave, while we have you, our next question is actually for you. Can we add links to our required gainful employment disclosures?
That's a great question. And Mike, I'd want you to chime in on this as well. That is probably maybe a next gen or a phase 2 sort of enhancement. Right now, the necessity of working with as many institutions as we are makes it hard for us to collect individual information and to link back to that information via Career Coach. That could be something that we. Sorry, Mike, do you want to go ahead?
We would need to enhance Career Coach if we wanted to put that gainful employment information in Career Coach itself, but you can totally add links to that from MyPath if you want to do that. So like, for example, if you wanted to have like an advisor card with the tasks for a student for career exploration, and you wanted one of those steps in that set of tasks for your student to be to read about the gainful employment information, you could easily configure that.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Connie, who had asked, how does or how could MyPath integrate, if at all, with the Starfish Enterprise solution?
It's a great question. So I will say that will happen in steps. So the first thing you can do is you can easily allow your students to link to Starfish from MyPath. And in fact, you could actually set those links up so that they sign the user in when they get there without needing to maintain multiple sets of credentials. We're actually actively engaging in a project right now to begin to retrieve EdPlan data from products like Starfish and to host them within state systems so that we can also allow you to create experiences in MyPath based on EdPlan data. So for example, if there's a early alert type message that needs to go out, we could actually tell MyPath about it early and have it trigger warnings as well. Knowing that an EdPlan is incomplete, you could set up a task for a student to be able to go over there. Those are all things that are coming in the future for MyPath. But for now, you can easily allow students to navigate between them, and actually SSO between them will work as well.
Fantastic. Dave, there's a question regarding the Career Coach dashboard that you were displaying earlier. Mark says that they did not see the years on the chart. Is this current year data, 5-year estimates, average? What's the timeline?
Right. So good question. It depends on what chart it is we were looking at. So there's both a wage chart and an employment chart. For the wage chart, the x-axis is based off of the percentile. So we progress from least experience to most experience. So we won't ever, the x-axis isn't related at all to time or years. For the employment dashboard, we look back. I believe it's 6 months for job postings and 5 years for the occupation employment. So it may be that I didn't scroll down quite far enough in my demonstration for you to be able to see the x-axis, but it'll be back 5 years for the occupations and 6 months for the job postings.
Thank you. I see that we are at our time for the webinar, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is just ask one more question. And then for those of you who did not get a chance to get your questions answered, just know I'll be posting a link to our Get Satisfaction board in just a few moments after we answer this next question, but you'll be able to get the answers to those questions on there as part of the FAQs. But I think this will be great for our final question, and that one's for you, Mike. Nathan says, MyPath seems to focus on onboarding, which is very important, but I believe that most applicants are undecided about community college or have already decided that it is a backup plan. How can MyPath be used to convince the many applicants who are not decided?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So I think there are 2 different ways that we approach that problem. The first is actually the Chancellor's Office controlled CCC MyPath account, where they explain and provide access to information like career exploration, like financial aid information, student services information, and all of it is tailored to drive the student into the application based on the idea that if we show them that college has, or that the California Community College system can provide the pathway to a career they want, is accessible because it will provide for the financial aid resources that they need. The Chancellor's Office does a good job of setting that experience up in such a way to help students understand that the CCC system is right for them. So that is a good way for us to approach sort of organic web traffic. In terms of prospective students who may be visiting your website, you can actually, as we talked about earlier, set MyPath up so that a student can gain access to it before they ever even fill out an application. You, at that point, actually have the opportunity to set MyPath up to provide tasks for students, to direct them to the information that you want to direct them to help them understand that your college is, in fact, going to help them get where it is they're trying to go. And that is, like I said, before they go through the 10 or 20-minute application experience. So they don't need to commit that far. They don't need to sit through that process. You can actually give them access to the tool set that you want to give them access to, without requiring that application step. So I think that probably is sort of the multi-pronged way we approach that segment of the student population.
Thank you so much, Mike. And so we're now going to go ahead and bring our webinar to a close. As I mentioned earlier, I know that there are still a few questions in the chat box, but we will be posting the questions to those as part of our FAQs at the user community link listed down below. In addition, I want to let you know that the recording of this and with these slides will be posted on the EPI website, which is listed right here, for within 5 business days, and you will receive a notification via email when that has been posted. Also want to let you know that our next webinar will be June 13th at 2 p.m., once again on Wednesday at 2 p.m. So make sure that if you have any new questions or have any additional information that you would like to get out there, please make plans to join us for that. And in conclusion, for Dave, Mitch, and Mike, I want to thank you for joining us today and have a great afternoon.